You just handed my seat to a stranger, and now the whole city is about to watch you lose everything." The microphone shook in his hand, but his voice was calm and sharp. Every face in the ballroom turned, gasps cut through the music, and I watched my stepmother's champagne glass slip from her fingers. That moment, right there, changed my life forever. If you love stories where the underdog rises, please subscribe. Have you ever been pushed aside by your own family? Now let me take you back to the start of that night. The Grand Monarch Hotel in downtown Chicago glittered like something out of a movie. Crystal chandeliers lit the ballroom with golden fire, every table dressed in white linen and orchids that probably cost more than my weekly groceries. It was supposed to be my father's night, the grand finale of Richard Miller, retiring after 35 years as one of the most respected principals in Illinois. He had built his career on discipline, excellence, and image. Image mattered more than anything to him. I arrived with Ethan, my quiet husband, about 15 minutes late. Traffic on the highway had been brutal, and I was already nervous. I smoothed down the navy dress I had worn 3 years earlier for my Teacher of the Year award, while Ethan adjusted his plain black suit. "Everything okay?" I asked as he kept glancing at his phone. "Just last-minute work," he murmured, squeezing my hand. I thought nothing of it then. The ballroom buzzed with 200 guests, school board members, donors, reporters, even city officials. A massive banner stretched across the stage reading, "Celebrating Richard Miller, 35 years of educational excellence." My father stood at the entrance in a tailored Armani suit, looking more like a senator than a retired principal. Beside him, Veronica sparkled in gold sequins, her laugh rehearsed, her diamond necklace catching every flash from the photographer. "Sophia, you made it," Dad said when he spotted me, though his smile froze halfway. "Of course, Dad. I wouldn't miss it." Veronica's eyes swept over my dress like it was a clearance item from a discount rack. "How nice of you to come," she said smoothly. "Alexandra has been here for an hour already, networking with the board members." Alexandra, her daughter, the perfect one, corporate lawyer, Harvard Law, always introduced as our rising star. As we made our way toward the tables, I felt something off. The way Veronica's smile never faded, the way my father avoided looking directly at me, and the way Ethan checked his phone like he was waiting for something. Something was coming. I just didn't know what yet. The place cards gleamed like verdicts. 8 seats at the VIP table. I looked once, twice, then a third time. Richard Miller, Veronica Miller, Alexandra Shaw, board members, donors, but no Sophia Miller. "There must be a mistake," I whispered. Veronica appeared at my elbow, her perfume overwhelming. "Oh, didn't Richard tell you we had to make adjustments? Space constraints, you understand." I pointed at the empty seat right next to Alexandra. "But I'm his daughter." "Of course you are, dear. But you'll be more comfortable at table 14, near the teachers from the district. You'll have so much in common." Her words were velvet knives. I felt the blood rush to my face as Alexandra leaned back in her chair, her manicured hand resting on the seat that should have been mine. "Didn't see you there, Sophia," she smiled sweetly. "Don't you look comfortable?" Ethan's jaw tightened beside me. "This is her father's retirement dinner," he said firmly, "and we're so glad you both could come." Veronica cut in, already turning to introduce Alexandra to the chairman of the fund. They didn't even care that I was standing right there, invisible in my own family. My heart pounded. The humiliation burned. The night had barely begun, and already I had been erased. Table 14 felt like exile. The chairs were covered in polyester, not silk, and the view of the stage was blocked by a giant pillar. Around me sat a handful of teachers, people who had clearly tried their best to dress up, but still looked out of place in this glittering room. We smiled at each other politely, but we all knew what this was. The bargain seats at a premium show, Across the ballroom, laughter kept spilling from the VIP table. Every time I glanced over, I saw Alexandra leaning closer to a board member, tossing her hair like she was auditioning for a commercial. Veronica was busy announcing to anyone within earshot that her daughter had just closed another $1 million case. And my father, he walked past our table twice without even stopping. I told myself it was fine. I told myself I did not need a fancy table. But then the music softened, and my father stepped onto the stage, adjusting the microphone with that same authority he had used for decades as principal. My stomach tightened. This was the moment. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he began, his voice booming across the ballroom. He thanked the donors, the board, the district leaders. Then came the part that made my heart race. As many of you know, the Miller Education Fund has grown thanks to our generous sponsor, EdFuture. Tonight, I am thrilled to announce the person who will succeed me on the board of directors. I froze. This was it. The position he had promised me 3 years ago, when the fund was created. He had said my classroom experience would be invaluable, that I would carry on the family tradition. After careful consideration, he continued, "I am delighted to announce that Alexandra Shaw will be joining the board as my successor." The applause hit me like a punch. People stood, clapping, cheering, cameras flashing. Alexandra rose gracefully, her red dress shimmering under the lights as if she were accepting an Oscar. She waved at the crowd, her smile wide, her eyes flicking to me for just a second. I could see the triumph in her face. I sat frozen. 2 years of research, late nights drafting proposals, my own money spent on pilot programs for teachers, gone. Just like that. My father went on about how Alexandra's legal expertise and corporate connections would take the fund to new heights. The irony made me want to laugh and cry at the same time. A lawyer who had never stepped foot in a classroom was about to decide how millions would be spent on teachers. Mrs. Chen, one of the teachers at my table, leaned toward me. "But you're an actual teacher. You understand what we need." Her voice was soft, but the truth of it landed hard. And that was exactly why I had not been chosen. Ethan's hand tightened around mine. His phone buzzed again. He glanced at it, and for the first time that night, I saw the corner of his mouth lift. It was not anger. It was something else. Something I could not yet name. Meanwhile, Veronica dabbed her eyes with a napkin, as if her daughter had just saved the world. "Ambition runs in the family," she declared loudly, making sure half the room heard. The word ambition stung like salt on an open wound. Because teaching children to read, guiding teenagers through their hardest years, apparently did not count as ambition. I stared at Alexandra basking in applause, while the board chairman shook her hand and photographers crowded closer. And in that moment, I realized something. This was not just about humiliation. This was about power. They had stolen my place at the table. And with it, the chance to help hundreds of teachers and thousands of students. I wanted to scream. I wanted to walk out. But then I noticed Ethan slip his phone back into his pocket, his jaw set, his eyes calm and steady, and I knew he was about to do something. Something none of us would ever forget. So what exactly was my quiet husband planning that night? The applause for Alexandra was still echoing when Ethan suddenly stood. His chair scraped loudly against the floor, making half the room turn in our direction. For a man who hated attention, the sight of him walking toward the stage made my heart stop. "Ethan," I whispered, grabbing his sleeve. "Don't." But he gently pulled away, his calm face set like stone. He reached the microphone before anyone could react. "Excuse me," he said, voice steady, carrying across the ballroom. "I need to say something." The chatter died instantly. Even Alexandra froze mid-handshake with the board chairman. People looked at him like he had lost his mind. A man in a plain black suit, no name tag, no title, daring to interrupt a celebration filled with Chicago's elite. My father stepped forward, his face red. "This is not the time." But Ethan didn't back down. "It is the time." he replied, his voice sharper now. You just gave control of a $10 million education fund to someone who has never taught a single class. Tell me, how does that make sense? A ripple ran through the room. Some guests exchanged uneasy glances. Others pulled out their phones to record. The tension was electric. Veronica shot up from her chair, her smile stretched tight. Security, please remove him. But David Chen, the board chairman, raised a hand. Let him speak, he said. His eyes narrowed with interest, as if he already suspected something the rest of them didn't. Ethan continued, his tone calm but unyielding. Teachers are the backbone of every success story in this room. Yet tonight, the one teacher who has dedicated her life to students was pushed aside for networking opportunities. Is this what the Miller Education Fund stands for? I sat frozen, my pulse pounding in my ears. Who was this man? My quiet husband, who always avoided the spotlight, was suddenly commanding the entire ballroom. Alexandra recovered quickly, tossing her hair with practiced ease. This is embarrassing, she said loudly. You have no idea how these things work. Running a fund takes connections, not lesson plans. A few people laughed politely, but Ethan didn't flinch. He stepped closer to the microphone. Connections don't matter if they fail the very people the fund was meant to serve. Tell me, when was the last time you spent a day in a classroom? Alexandra. Her smile faltered for the first time. The room buzzed with whispers. I could feel the balance shifting, ever so slightly. My father tried again, his voice tight with authority. Enough. Sit down before you embarrass yourself. But Ethan shook his head. No. The only embarrassment here is ignoring the reality of teachers while celebrating corporate resumes. For a long moment, silence hung heavy. Even the waiters had stopped moving. It was the kind of silence that meant everyone was waiting for the next explosion. And I knew Ethan was just getting started, because when his phone buzzed again, he glanced at it, smiled ever so slightly, and then looked straight at my father. It was not the smile of a man overstepping. It was the smile of a man holding a secret that was about to turn this entire night upside down. So what exactly was Ethan about to reveal that could shatter everything? Ethan adjusted the microphone, the glow from the stage lights catching the calm set of his jaw. For the first time all night, he looked completely in control. The quiet man everyone had overlooked was suddenly the only one who mattered. Before we go any further, he said, scanning the room, let me ask a simple question. Do any of you actually know who your sponsor is? The crowd shifted uncomfortably. My father frowned, clearly irritated. Of course we do. EdFuture, a tech company. What does that have to do with anything? Ethan's smile was small, but sharp enough to cut glass. Everything, he said, because EdFuture isn't just some random sponsor. It was founded by someone who grew up watching his mother struggle as a teacher, someone who swore he would change things for educators who give everything, yet are treated like they're worth nothing. The room went silent. Forks froze halfway to plates. Even the photographer lowered his camera. Then Ethan looked directly at my father. That someone is me. My name is Ethan Miller. I am the founder and CEO of EdFuture. It was like the oxygen had been sucked out of the room. Gasps rose from every corner. One woman covered her mouth. Another man muttered, "No way." Veronica's face drained of color, then turned a furious shade of red. "That is impossible. You drive a Honda Civic?" Her voice cracked. "You shop at Costco?" Ethan nodded calmly. "I do. Because I would rather invest in classrooms than cars. Because I would rather put money into teachers than into champagne." The applause started slowly at first, from the back tables where the teachers sat. Then it spread, louder, bolder, until half the room was clapping while the other half sat stunned. Alexandra forced a laugh, high and brittle. "This doesn't change anything. I was chosen. I have the connections. I have the skill." Ethan's eyes narrowed. Do you because you clearly did not read the contract you claim to review. Section 7 requires that at least one active classroom teacher serve on the board. Section 12 states that announcing appointments without sponsor approval is a breach of contract. Which means, Alexandra, your appointment is already void. David Chen pulled out his phone, his expression darkening as he scrolled. You are right, he said slowly, addressing my father. This entire announcement violates the terms. If Ed Future withdraws, the fund collapses. The silence that followed was devastating. For 35 years, my father had ruled with authority, but in less than 3 minutes, Ethan had stripped that authority away. Veronica's composure cracked completely. You set us up, she hissed. This was a trap. Ethan shook his head. No, I gave you money with conditions. You assumed those conditions didn't matter. You assumed the teacher in the room didn't matter. That was your mistake. The teachers at table 14 rose to their feet, clapping harder now. Even some board members joined in. The tide had turned. And then Ethan delivered the blow that no one could recover from. From this moment forward, he said, his voice ringing with finality, the Miller Education Fund will no longer exist. Instead, all $10 million will be redirected into a new foundation, the Sophia Miller Foundation, led by someone who actually knows what education means. The room erupted. Some cheered. Some shouted in disbelief. Cameras flashed like fireworks, capturing every second of the downfall. I sat frozen, tears stinging my eyes, as my quiet husband stood tall on that stage and gave me back everything that had been stolen. But little did I know, the fallout was only beginning. So what happens when a father's legacy collapses in front of 200 people? The ballroom was chaos. Half the room clapped, half the room sat in stunned silence, and my father collapsed into his chair like the weight of his entire career had just crushed him. Veronica shouted at Alexandra. Alexandra argued back, and the sound of their perfect image cracking was almost louder than the applause, but I was not looking at them. I was looking at Ethan, my husband, the man everyone thought was just another face in the crowd, now revealed as the one who had quietly held all the power. And he had used it, not to show off, but to defend me. He walked down from the stage and took my hand. His grip was warm and steady. This was always yours, he whispered. This table, this board, this respect, you earned it long before tonight. For the first time in years, I felt seen, not as an embarrassment, not as someone who settled, but as someone who mattered. Over the weeks that followed, the Sophia Miller Foundation was launched. Teachers from across Illinois wrote in, thanking us for valuing their work. Parents sent messages saying, finally, someone gets it. And students, my own and many others, left notes saying teachers were the reason they believed in themselves. Meanwhile, my father faded into the background. The man who had built a career on discipline and image would now be remembered for choosing prestige over purpose. Veronica and Alexandra retreated, their names attached to a scandal that spread far beyond Chicago. And me, I kept teaching, because that is who I am, a teacher, and now a teacher with a louder voice, one that could fight for others like me. Here is what I learned from that night. Your worth is not defined by the table you are seated at. It is defined by the lives you touch, the people you help, the love and effort you pour into your work. Family is not just blood. It is the people who see your value even when you cannot see it yourself. And sometimes, the person who loves you most will fight battles you did not even know you could win. But let me ask you, if you were in my shoes, would you have confronted your father on that stage, or would you have walked away quietly? Do you think someone who has never taught a day in their life should decide the future of teachers? And the hardest question of all, when it comes down to it, would you rather chase prestige or live with purpose? I want to hear what you think. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story touched you, please hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. And it lets me share more stories that honor the people who are too often overlooked. Because teaching is not ordinary. It is extraordinary. And no one should ever forget that.